Hello, everyone. I want to say thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Thank you, Johns Hopkins School, Bloomberg School of Public Health, for the amazing opportunity to have this discussion, and not only just have the discussion, but to take action. That's pretty much what I'm about, is not only just changing the language, but changing the way that we do things. So a little bit about myself. I was basically raised in foster care since birth, so about 18 years. Right as I stand today, before you, I'm a 23-year-old, typical, goofy, fun, loving person. But my story started off really sad. I was a child of drug addicts and was raised in the foster care system. A little bit about myself. Raised in the foster care system made me really vulnerable for sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, so many different levels of trauma. So at the age of 10, when I met a man who promised me that he would care for me and love me and be there in ways that nobody ever was, I believed him. Unfortunately, this led me at the age of 10, yes, I'm not lying, 10 years old, with little to no body and very naive and vulnerable. I met a man who changed my life. He told me that he was going to take care of me and everything was going to be fine, and all the glitter on the cake and the cake and the icing and all the stuff that you would like to say. But this man exploited me from the ages of 10 on the streets, in papers, massage parlors, Craigslist, strip clubs. I just had seen about it all by the time I hit 15. But in addition to my own experience, I've had the amazing opportunity to work as an advocate for young people who are also being victimized. I've worked as a direct service provider, working directly with these victims. I've mentored and facilitated a drop-in center for these youth who've been exploited. What I've noticed is that my story is similar to many stories throughout the country. I've done it and been honored to have the opportunity to do work throughout various areas in the country, such as Texas, the East Coast, West Coast, and I've been amazed to notice that records show, and numbers are staggering in the alarming rates of over 60% of the young people who we are finding to be sexually exploited either have been in contact or are currently in the foster care system. So you wonder, how does this occur, or how is this happening, or what does this mean? This means that we need to look at our systems in a different way. The foster care system itself is setting youth up to be more vulnerable to be sexually exploited. And what do I mean by this? Well, when you're in the foster care system, people are paid a monetary stipend to be able to care for you and provide for you. Oftentimes, these stipends don't go to the youth or their needs. So they become to normalize that they're aware and they are used for profit. People didn't really care what happened to me as long as they got their paycheck. And this is what happens to so many of the youth in our country today. I had to understand at a very young age that my purpose was that of financial gain, and my purpose was to bring income into a household. That was a very sad and hopeless, meaning for me. But in addition to that, my story shows how many young people are, in addition, not having healthy relationships and healthy models of what those relationships should look like. So every time I had a problem, I was moved. I wasn't having the opportunity to really look at what healthy decision-making was, what was problem-solving when you get into an argument, because unfortunately, I was moved. People had complete control of my life. My environment, the neighborhood, the city I lived in, what school I went to. So I didn't see much of a difference. Like many of these youth, they don't see much of a difference when an exploiter capitalized on the parallel process of the foster care system by the control. It wasn't much different. So in addition to me normalizing the fact that this person had ultimate control in my life, I realized how much attachment issues plays a part of many youth's lives and myself. After spending 18 years in foster care, I can say that the longest relationship that I ever had or sustained, unfortunately, was that of the exploiter and his family for over 6 years. This is something that we need to really look at when we talk about, families that are committed and dedicated to making change for these youth. So I don't want to just put all the blame on one system, and I'm not here to blame anyone. I think that us evaluating the foster care and the child welfare system is just one way to look at it. What I found is that we need a cross-systems approach. You know, we need to acknowledge that being in foster care allows you to get mental health services. That we need to understand that while you may be in one system, if you are exploited and you come in contact with law enforcement, that's another system. What I find the most disturbing is all these systems are not talking to each other. So we're really not able to make effective change in the way that we work, the policies we set up, and the procedures in which we go about doing our work. So there's not enough collaboration with NGOs and the systems. They don't know what's going on with the youth, let alone what each of them are doing with each other. So, for example, if a youth runs away from California to New York, we need to start to assess what are the services that she had in California? Did she have any services there? What worked? What didn't work? We need to assess the safety factors and the jurisdiction problems, because without the proper assessment of these youth, we could be potentially sending them back into dangerous situations. This happens all too often, and I've seen it in various counties throughout the country. Because these youth often face with juvenile justice, we need juvenile justice to collaborate with the foster care system. We need the foster care system to collaborate with the mental health system. So, for example, what I mean by youth and foster care and juvenile justice, all too often, if a youth comes in contact as a victim of child trafficking, and they go through the court process and things like that, the foster care system makes the decision to put the youth in a home that's probably specific just for youth who've been exploited. Well, this, on one hand, sets up the youth to be more exploited because the predators and the exploiters start to recognize these households and these areas in which this occurs. So they start to prey around the area, the very same area that the child welfare system set them up to be successful. So it's really contradictory to one another. We also need to look at more collaborations through the court processes. As we know, how we identify these victims sometimes is from being the first responders, is from having the ability to meet them on the streets or when they're in the midst of it all. So we need to really look at the collaboration with court processes. An example, in California, a lot of the work that we've done through the legislation of AB 12 and things of that sort, working with child welfare, we have a system called the 241.1 hearings. This different from before. Previous to this new hearing, it was either a 300 or a 602. The child's welfare becomes dependent either on the child welfare system or the juvenile justice system. This process and these models show how both these systems can work together in initiating a better, more safer, and more effective process for these young people. We also need to talk about how we need more collaboration between survivors and professionals. I can't say it enough how much of an honor it is to be around so many amazing people who are dedicated to this cause, so many public figures who are sharing their efforts for this cause, and really just everyone in this room and all that you contribute to making a difference. But we need to be realistic. We first need to talk about how we advocate as professionals. I really, really encourage, I think that we all have very well-intended ideals when we do things and we take action, but I really encourage us looking at our terminology and changing our language. We cannot continue to refer to these youth, and I say youth because it's not just girls, it's not just boys, it's LGBTQ youth, it's youth all across the spectrum that are vulnerable. We need to change the language. So when we refer to these youth, we definitely need to avoid using the words prostitute or prostituted, because this instills a label on these young people that's all they'll ever be. And so within doing the work, I cringe when I hear the word, because it's like, does that mean I'm still a prostitute? So I question you. I challenge you to look at the way you do your work and to challenge you to avoid the terminology that society is perpetuating this terrible issue. But we need so many of you in this room, researchers, people who work in NGOs, policymakers, public officials, role models. We need all of you do the work that you're doing, but also collaborate with survivors. And what I mean by this is that all too often I see amazing opportunities where these procedures may be put together and these ideas may be put together, but they're not realistic to the actual lifestyles of what's going on with these youth. So we need to bring survivors to the table because we want to have recommendations that will be effective and realistic to the trauma in which they're living. So the way that we collect data, we need survivor input in regards to what's the best way to actually do that. The way we take actions and the way we mandate or create procedures and policies. So one thing that I find that although child welfare, again, as I've stated, does do certain elements that sets a youth up to be more vulnerable, they are making great strides in certain areas. I can say, for example, in California, there's a thing called the TLC, Transition Living Conference. In New York, there's a thing called the FTC, Family Team Conference. These are models that are primarily used in the child welfare system. These models bring everyone to the table, anyone that's got any important role in that youth's life, the welfare workers, the parents, the friends, any mentors in the community. But most importantly, it brings the youth to the table. These meetings are currently used in regards to youth placement in the child welfare system, but I believe, as a survivor and as an advocate, I believe these models will be effective if we utilize them in fighting child trafficking. So we need to assess and understand and help youth and young people understand that it's about interdependence. A big way exploiters are keeping these youth isolated is by making them really think that life is about independence. I'm pretty sure that we can all say that we didn't get to where we were at without the collaboration of people, without the assistance of people. They say some of the most amazing and most successful people have at least 10 permanent connections. That's 10 people that has contributed to their lives in various ways. And so we need to ensure that the youth have the opportunity to speak up about what they need, what's going on for them, where their mindset is at, and just throw it all on the table. These models allow the conversation for concerns to be looked at, for the strengths in the situations and in each role, the options, and then to make an effective plan with the collaborative process with that youth. That's how we can make change, and that's how we can allow youth to be more instilled in their own lives rather than allowing people to control it for them. In conclusion, I definitely want to say that prevention is key. I've been allowed an amazing opportunity to work with members of Health and Human Services and members of Congress on strengthening the child welfare response because they understand and they are starting to understand and get prevention is key. But we have to look at all systems, the educational system. There isn't enough work being done on the ground, specifically in regards to awareness in the educational system, allowing young people to identify what an exploiter might do or what are exploiters' behaviors so that they can start to identify. And this is important because young people can start to say, oh, and make actual conscious decisions and understanding the difference between someone being extra nice and someone that's really out to get them. In addition to that, I've met various people whose lives have changed, not because they actually seek for help, but because one of their colleagues or peers actually was aware of what was going on and the signs and was able to reach out and ask for help. So this is why it's important to instill prevention in our education systems. We also need gender and population-specific services. What do I mean by this? Girls take up a majority and a large number of the young people that are being trafficked, yet there's a very low number of gender-specific services for these young girls. We need to be able to provide, we need to be able to, make sure that they're in the communities in which these young people come from. What I mean by population-specific services is that a lot of people are not understanding how much of a large number of the LGBTQ community are also being sexually exploited. So we need to look into specific services for them and their understanding of sexual exploitation. Because a lot of the young people that are exploited, not to say that it doesn't happen, that young people come from good homes and they get exploited too. But a lot of these youth come from impoverished communities and not from homes in which the parents are actively in their lives. So it's our role as a community, it's our role as people of interest and contributors to our society to make sure that we set services up and that we ensure that they're in the communities in which these youth can be served. Also, we need trauma-informed services. I am so sorry to say that workshops for these young people are not the way to go. We really need, trauma-informed services of assessing the root of the problem, talking about what self-esteem is. So much of what these young people need to understand is that they need to gain and build self-esteem because they never had those opportunities. We need to talk about what makes them empowered, what makes them thrive, what makes them smile, what makes them get the motivation to get up every day. What triggers are present in their lives and what they, in their own control, can do in response to a trigger. So I want to end with a quote that I hold very dear to my heart. It means the world to me. It's a quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I'm just going to say it, and then I'm going to give a little brief explanation. It says, "The test of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still have the ability to function. One should, for example, see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise." And I feel that this quote is so prevalent in regards to us as providers and people servicing this population, in addition to the young people, as I stand here today, who are laying down somewhere feeling hopeless. We can overcome. We have the drive and determination, and it's amazing people and collaborators, such as everyone in this room, that is going to make a difference and make it something else better happen for these youth. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for all the work that you all are doing, and I just can't wait to see the actions that are brought out from this symposium because it's time to make change and not just have the discussions. Thank you so much.